Hey everybody, so it is finally time. I am getting back to this tier list after what, like 5 months or so? The last one I posted was in February or March, and I wanted to do a lot of these going forward, and we just aren't getting that many updates. And while we're seeing the end of the operation really coming close now as we speak, and time just kind of got away from me. I meant to keep coming back, but I figured I'd keep training, and it just ended up being, this is one of the better times that I can actually hit this up. If I need to update it as time goes on, I'll make another video, but something tells me this might be the last one for Gears 5's sakes, at least for the classes. To appease the people that just want to see the tier list, I will just put it right on screen now. These are my thoughts straight up without any context or nuance. As well, I will give you a downloadable image that you can share and save and do whatever with. As far as my tier list goes down below, and on top of it I will give you the tier maker so you can customize your own as well. If you didn't want to hear me ramble here, but you still want a bit of a breakdown of what I critiqued the classes on and the criteria I was basing these ranks on, I'll have a document linked in the description down below. It's just a gigantic list going over the main points of criteria. I made sure to evenly spread them out between each of the classes. This helps a lot with the feedback I got from the first tier list of a lot of the classes were graded inconsistently. Like, I would say one thing for a certain class and not mention it for another. So the document is just kind of my way where I went through and graded everything based off of like a certain criteria, and getting away from the original inspiration for this tier list was like Smite creators and stuff like that, where they would jot down a few notes and that was it, mainly just talking about like the highlights of certain gods and stuff like that. So I figured I would just grade them all on a standardized criteria of the things I find important in a class. Now, given for how long it would take to actually go through every single piece of criteria that I went through, this video would go on for hours. So I'm still going to be summarizing stuff up. So either way, I encourage check out the document because it'll help out a lot as far as what I was grading them on. As well, if we might not see eye to eye, you might see something in the document that might make sense as to why I ranked a class a certain way. Also, what I am not going to do this time is I'm not going to be dealing with toxicity. Like, I let it go for a lot of the first tier list, but like, if you can't control your emotions over my opinions, you just want to talk trash, or like, you know, you're going to get pissy about stuff, the comments are just going to get removed. I'm not entertaining it anymore. Our community ain't about that. Gears already has enough like toxicity and people being angry and shouting at each other going all the time, and I just don't have enough time to deal with people that just are trying to hurt others. I'm not really there for it. That being said, if you don't agree with my opinions, let's talk it out. Feel free to give me some builds to try out, some different strategies to go with. I'll make videos and give credit where I can. I mean, that's where one of my more recent videos with the Tactician was so great, because I learned the value of the card Discipline, for example. Even more so, feel free to make your own tier list and post it on social media. Make your own tier list videos. I highly encourage that, and honestly, I'd love you if you do. In particular, shoutouts to Turner Burner on the Escape tier list. He was the only one I saw that actually used the tier list and went through like a full-blown analysis. Go check out his video. He is way more experienced in Escape than I am. Go and give him some love, because honestly, he deserves it. And seriously, thank you, Turner Burner, for giving me some better insight on a lot of the classes for Escape. Even if I don't wholeheartedly agree with him on every front, his opinions are totally valid and he gives really good reasons for it. Just go check him out. Go give him some love. Now, in regards to the tier list, a couple things I just want to bring up. One, I changed the tier list, as you can already see, a little bit more because there was a bit more nuance to it as things kept going forward. Like, I noticed that a lot of classes were in the same rank, but I didn't exactly see them as equals, so I went and added a little bit more nuance around, particularly around A. So I wanted to give that A+ tier as far as like, this class is a bit above balanced, but say if there's some stuff above it that's a little bit stronger, that's where I've got S. And then I kind of took off the OP tier, just saying like, these classes are your ridiculously strongest classes. I don't think anything's wholeheartedly overpowered, over bloated to the point where really the coalition needs to come in and nerf it into the ground, but we have stuff that gets pretty darn close. So that's where I threw in, it's like, it's near OP. It's gonna be your strongest of the strongest, and they are ridiculous still. But I don't know if they're necessarily worth some changes and modifications, if you get what I mean. Number 2, here is a screenshot of where I am right now with the class levels. I've only got one more left to go, and depending on how tonight, and I'm filming this on the 16th of August, by the way, depending on how tonight goes with the daily hordes and stuff like that, I may have all of the classes to level 20. All I've got to do is get like what, 40,000 experience on Striker, and I am all good to go. And one last thing, it's a spoiler, but I don't think any class right now is going to be in these bottom few tiers here. I just don't think that any class is particularly bad or unplayable, or if I see it in a lobby, I go, uh-oh, I'm suddenly worried. I think every class has the strong ability to hold its own now, which I feel a little bit silly, and I'm kind of going back on what I was thinking about having the bell curve idea when it came to the tier list back when I made the first one, because it doesn't really fit itself well with the idea of playing co-op. It works well with versus in MOBAs and stuff like that, where I originally got that idea of the bell curve, but no, you want every class to have their own ability to hold their own when it comes to Horde, because that gives a lot more flexibility in playstyle. So at the end of the day, the stronger we can have every single class, the better. Of course, we don't want the game to be too easy, but we also don't want it to be too hard, but just, you know, having everything nicely balanced would be ideally where we want stuff. This also gives really strong shout out to Operation 7. I think TC really did a great job of updating all of the promotional classes, so they have some viability. They have a decent build. Even if it's only one build that they really use, it's still something that they can do pretty decently well, and they have their strong suits all around. That being said, even though I don't think any classes are particularly underpowered or really bad right now, that's not going to stop me from hopefully making some future videos talking about what I'd like to see fixed in some of the classes we have, as well as then what I'd like to see from classes in the future of Gears Horde as a whole. Also, I'm not doing Escape this time around, it's just Horde. I think honestly Turner Burner has a way more valuable tier list than what I think I could ever make, unless I just grinded every single day of my life until I ran out of people to play with. So I'm holding off for now. If I feel confident enough to make another tier list video for Escape, I'll go for it, but I don't think I have one just yet. And I'm also going to be doing these in order this time as they show up in the menu. So starting off the list is going to be Blademaster. This class I was the most wrong about in the previous tier list. I see that now. It ended up being the first class I ended up getting to level 20, and I fell in love with it after a lot of people gave me some strong encouragement to give it a shot and give it a whirl and really see what the good was of that class. I was seeing a lot of people try it out without me actually getting my hands dirty in the class. This class is great. I'm throwing it right up in S. I'll go over what exactly didn't put it up in S+, but I think this class is incredibly strong, namely for the sake of it has an insanely high amount of damage, especially when you max out like the bleed perk. You get the Blade Dancer going, you've got Brawler, you've got a lot of melee damage. On top of that, you have a lot of different ways that you can play. You can throw in some damage being a shotgun or claw-based damage killer, as well as then rocking with like ambush cards and things like that. Electroblade is always going to be incredibly useful just for that stun. You throw it in with the the static shock. I can't think of what the name is right now. Shock chain. I had to stop and think for a second. Throw it in with shock chain and everything around you's getting stunned. A lot of things are getting bleeding. It's freaking crazy the amount of damage that this does. It does have a decent amount of crowd control and stuff like that as well. All in all, it is a tanky class that does an absurd amount of damage. Its main weakness and what holds it back from being S+ in my opinion is it doesn't have the strongest counter or the strongest answer to your flying type enemies, your Kestrels, your Guardians, your Sentinels. Now given if you can get a Guardian or Sentinel to get up close in your face, which a lot of times they do because those enemies are freaking jerks, then you can do a lot of damage to them, but it's much more of a luck thing and it's a lot harder to control. That's my only reason why. If they had a decent option against flying enemies, which there's some, they do okay. I mean, you can run the Brutal Claw, you can run more of that like longer range distance type of damage class, but overall, like I usually go the melee route and it's not as strong there. Still incredibly strong class, like one of your best damage dealers in the game, super versatile, super tanky, love it. Now, as far as what does go into S plus is Demo is still absolutely ridiculous. This class is nuts. The amount of damage that this class can put out from a super far distance while you're at it makes it absurd. And this is from what I keep learning about history, the nerfed down version of it. I never really saw JD with a grenade launcher lancer built into the class, or what it was like 8 shots of boom shot and 8 shots of grenade launcher from what I remember people were saying. That's absurd. that's absolutely insane. The amount of damage that this class does with both the boom shot and the Lancer GL, it's got a few different ways to play. The Lancer GL is actually a lot of fun and really solid. If you see the video I did on Icebound, is a great example of that. Cards like Spotter Support are my favorite. You've got a few different things you can rock with the artillery damage. You've got a lot that you can rock with just any type of explosions, namely boom shots in the GL. You can go a grenade building route. There's so much there, as well as then you do have some decent crowd control if you did want to make artillery strike give you that super long concussive shot on every enemy on the map if you wanted to, combining it with Spotter Support. The only thing this class really lacks is it's hard to get ammo right in the beginning, but then that's where my good love and my new best friend Good Kill comes into play. If you don't use this card, just stick near a friend and have them watch all the cool kills that you get, and then ammo boxes for everybody. It doesn't give you explosive ammo out of the ammo boxes that you get, but that can at least distract your friends and your teammates enough with the ammo boxes you drop to then get the big ones, so you get the explosive ammo. So even though this class struggles with ammo a little bit, it can still get around it. This class is disgusting. The amount of damage it does is gross. I love it. It's so good. This is the closest class I feel like needs a nerf of any sort. On to Infiltrator. Infiltrator, I honestly have been debating bouncing it between S and S plus, ultimately still sticking with S plus though. The amount, it's the damage, it's the uncloak that it does. All of these being the assault classes, they're all super high damage. This one's got the biggest instant burst damage that I've seen. It's that uncloak damage, the 10 times, especially if you have an overkill, you just ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. And the combination, the holy trinity of the Infiltrator I always love is Reaper, Blood Resonance, and Laceration. All three of those cards in conjunction just lead to a ton of damage, as well as then your way out with Reaper and the stim. It gives you tankiness, it gives you a ton of damage. It's absurd. Now this class doesn't have as much as far as flexibility going for it. Like, you can add a little bit more stim if you want a little bit more stability on your overstock. You can go more into like a power healing route. There are some cards that change out. I haven't really found enough great viable excuses to not go with the holy trinity of cards and then just whatever 2 cards you want to attach to that. It's a good luck, have fun. I mean, I really like having stim battery and the stim enhancement, I think it is, that makes your stim tankier. So basically you just don't die. I was almost debating this class being S plus though, mainly because I'm seeing a lot of people also recognizing that there's a lot of potential to go down and things for it to go wrong. You get caught in the wrong alleyway trying to chase up a carrier and you run into an elite drone that unloads all hellfire on you. That can be problematic, but even then you've got a lot at your arsenal to take care of that. Stun grenades are great. Just go buy some out of the fabricator. Then this class is disgusting. Keep it up. Marksman was also something that I put it in A the first time around. I'm throwing this up to S. I still think that discussion that I had about like the person's individual skill holds a bit of water, mainly just because of like, if you're mainly focusing on using the long shot, you miss that shot, you don't have any of your perks going to the marksman at that point. But then I learned the power and magic of Ice Deep Precision. That card is gross. Like, I was just tinkering with it whenever I started the tier list, and now I got that sucker to level 6. Oh my god, you don't have to be accurate, especially if you get a veteran with you. The freezing damage is disgusting. You kill every infantry enemy that has a head on it on the map, easy peasy. X-ray is always ridiculous because you can be safe and kill everything on the map while you're at it. The long range damage that it does, the critical damage that you can 100% to 0%, like scions and your big bully enemies out like it's nothing. Like, you've got a mild weakness on enemies like your guardians and your guardians and sentinels, but even then you can always just use your X-ray, or then just go ahead and focus on using the Marks. Like, this class is super duper strong. Again, still needs you to be able to aim and hit shots pretty consistently, and this class gets stronger the better you are at sniping. I love sniping since I've been growing up trying to make semi-okay Gears montages, at least in Gears 1 and a little bit in Gears 2. And so I've got that sniping blood in me, so I love this class. I've seen some people not as great at aiming, where that's where I mainly throw it into that S tier. An amazing class. I definitely agree it shouldn't be an A. Just absolutely shouldn't be an A. And now onto Nomad, and I'm throwing Nomad up in S tier, and I know all the assault classes are really good. Like, they're all really solid. This class doesn't do as much damage as the other 4, but it still holds its own really strong. You've got cards like Consecutive Shot, you've got the Marksman Mastery and stuff like that to do great damage. You've got a lot of different ways to play. You can go an execution style build, a sniper build, or something in between using Armored Shot, which the bleeding on that is really good. And the biggest pull that pulls this class up to S tier, on top of being an amazing jack of all trades where it does everything really well that it does, is its fear. The ability to fear enemies is one of the best crowd controls in the game, and you can do it at any range. Do you want to go ahead and chainsaw an enemy and get phase rolling? Do you want to go ahead and just use your ultimate at just about any, it's like my mid-range is what I consider it, your ultimate. It recharges up really fast with cards like Menace, or if you're just sniping, just getting headshots. And then you go ahead and use Intimidation on long range. So you've got fear everywhere. And I'm still learning a lot about Nomad. This is one of those, like, it blew me away realizing how valuable Lifeline is in tandem with Armored Shot and running the sniper build. I can't wait to actually get a good video out for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. Nomad is amazing for its versatility. I thoroughly love this class. Those aren't the right classes. We're going to Tank next. Anchor, I am throwing up an S+. This was an S originally. I'm bumping it up a little bit. One thing that I've really learned about this class since the last time I've done tier list is the amount of independence that this class has. Like, we were talking about it in Discord, and somebody brought it up really well, was if I'm ever playing with randoms, if I need to go into matchmaking, I'm going to pick Anchor, because all you really need to do is get your ammo regeneration up to level 5 to 7, somewhere in that ballpark, depending on how much you're shooting. You've got your shield handy to be a lifesaver. Either you're going and reviving stuff, or it can save you in a tough pinch. You've got a lot of damage with the Boltok whenever it comes to Bullet Chain, combining that with Bloody Shot, and you've got a few different cards to play around with your shield and stuff like that. This class is a set it and forget it class. It's super nice whenever I play Engineer, just seeing this class, because I know it's going to do decent damage. It doesn't do a ton. It doesn't do as much as your Demo or Infiltrator or Blademaster for that matter, but it still does a solid, steady, consistent amount. And if you have ammo regen on, you don't really need a weapons locker. You don't really need anything. It's the cheapest date. It's so inexpensive, and you can throw on some extra damage resistance and stuff like that out of your perks, but it's not wholeheartedly necessary. It's not going to break the character if you don't throw a whole lot into your perks. So it ends up being a pretty inexpensive class as far as needing fortifications specifically for them, needing weapons specifically for them, super independent, and that's what makes it highly valuable in just about any situation. On to Brawler. So I've had a lot of play time of Brawler, and it was one of my earlier on level 20s. I'm throwing in A+. I think this class has a lot of good things going for it, and it's weird where A+, this is the lowest grade I'm giving so far, so I feel like it's bad, but no, it's good. It's still very good. Main reasons of what I'm thinking of: the damage is solid. You've got a few different ways to play it. You can go the traditional tackle build that a lot of people are familiar with, since it was Cole's build, so it's, all about the shoulder barging tackles and the haymaker punches. It's got a unique crowd control, or at least a unique status ailment that it can have in the burning damage, which is super valuable against your matriarchs. It's great against wardens. It's great for also just having another status effect against enemies that have a lot of shields. Also super handy against like your guardians and sentinels. All you gotta do is hit their gun, and then all of a sudden they get lit on fire. The way that you can play it is decently ranged, although what I noticed is that both ways aren't considered equal. At least for me playing Horde, I have a very hard time justifying the tackle builds. You can make it work And I heard that apparently back in the day, it was disgustingly overpowered, like how invincible you were to go up and run up and tackle enemies. And you've got to have a lot of defense. You've got to have like perk up, enter fire, damage dash on to help you out. You can make it work, but it ends up coming at a higher risk than if you were to just go up close and personal with your Blademaster, for example. It still works solid. The train is a fantastic ult for getting in fast, getting some good tackle damage. Really comes handy in a pinch, like we've been doing Predator Hunt and just getting a enemy off the board by mass tackling them like Scions and stuff like that is really fun and exciting, or rushing over to a teammate to revive them is really good. They've got some strong tankiness. The burn damage is great. Their overall damage is solid. It doesn't compare in damage to these, and it can run at a little bit of a risk, and that's where I bring it down to A+. Still a great class though, still super useful. It's very self-reliant, doesn't need a whole lot. Buying a Scorcher maybe for 2500 power and going a Scorcher damage route is really good. And a lot of the weapons, they can scour off the land. Just, you know, find yourself a Claw, go find yourself a Lancer, so on and so forth. And you can make it really darn cheap as far as not needing a lot from the Fabricator. Oh, all in all, just a very well balanced class, a little bit stronger above the focal point of balance. Okay, hello, this is me from a few days later because I had a change of heart when I was editing the gunner portion of this video. Namely, I had it right here in A+, and I'm changing my mind and putting it up to S. Main reasons why is I was like a lot of what was bringing it down to A+ was thinking about your costs. You're talking mainly your perks and your weaponry. Looking at the perks, it's really necessary to try and get your chain gun ammo up if you're using a tri-shot or a mulcher. If you're as well, you need your ultimate duration to really extend out, because that's when you really get a lot of that power, when you can really start shredding through your Kestrels and your Swarmax and stuff like that. And you can have that duration last for the entire burst of damage that those enemies will do until they stop shooting at you, probably because they're in a lot of pain and a lot of damage. And I also was focusing on the weapons as well. I mean, the cost, if you wanted to get like a tri-shot right out of the gate or a mulcher right out of the gate, you're looking at 4,000, 3,000 power, 4,000 for a salvo as well. Or if you wanted to work with most of the chain guns, say for like what? Well, a cryo cannon's even like 3,500 power. So it's like, you've got a lot of these costs, and that was bringing it down. However, I started really looking at the cards again. I did another match just to be sure, like just having this moment of doubt. And the amount of damage you still do with like a slow chain gun regen, or, you know, your engineer has to consider having a weapons locker for you, which is another cost to go into it. But if you have mulcher on for the time being, you're still fine with the torque bow damage you're doing, especially if you're running serrated edge alongside of your normal chain gun build, still does really well. And I started looking at like all the different perks that the gunner does. I mean, if you do go a torque bow route and you run the concussive explosives, or you're running a salvo with concussive explosives, that stun and crowd control was unbelievably good. Combine that with the bleed damage of Reflect Shredder alongside of Serrated Edge. If you have one, it's great. If you have two, it's unbelievable. Just the damage that this class does is great. I was also thinking of throwing it down mainly because if you're on, say, a map like Training Grounds or Vasgar or Gridlock, for example, where you're perched up on top with your heavy gun, you get sniped and it falls over and you've got to go run and get your gun. But then I also had the consideration of just about every single match and darn near every type of mode, with the exception of like maybe Escape from Kadar or something like that. You're dealing with Mulcher Scions, you're dealing with Sentinels and Guardians, you're getting a lot of Elite Hunters and Theron Guards these days. So picking up weapons is a very easy thing. To have duplicates is a fairly common thing. I think that was probably my bigger realization, that the resources and the amount of power that you need isn't as big of a deal as I was originally putting it, and so for that, I'm putting the gunner up to S. That's all. Back to what I was filming originally. On to Pilot, which I am throwing at S straight up, especially after we ended up beating Horde Roulette with this class. This class is crazy. I'm so stupid for not like getting this class leveled earlier. I love it. I love it so much. The damage, while I don't think outside of the Silverback it does the absolute most amount of damage, like the drop shots are good and the hammer card is just nuts. That card is so bloated. The stun is insane, the damage is pretty good, and just the drop shot itself does a lot of damage as a whole. Just jeez, man, that card is crazy. But you do a decent amount of damage there. Where it really shines is when you jump into the silverback as well, and then you have your tons of options for different weapons. I've seen a lot of people preach for the Scorcher, a lot of people going for the Salvo. My favorite combo I think right now ends up being the Mulcher and the Salvo itself. I used to do a little bit with the Tri-Shot, although people were telling me what healing explosives also heals the silverback while you're at it. On top of your engineer can help you out in getting ammunition, a tactician can help you out in getting ammunition for the salvo, and you can have your silverback just last forever. In the right situation, you know, you get a carrier that shoots out all the little goopy things that I can't think of the name of right now. You go ahead and explode those all with salvos, and you're in for a super duper long time. And you just go lug it, go have fun. On top of that, Cold Finish has to be one of the strongest cards in the game. Whenever you're freezing a Wakatu in mid-air, that is nuts. Anything that drops below a certain percentage of health, I think it's like what, 30% or something like that, just frozen on the spot, and that works with any weapon you're doing. You combine that with aggressive armor or healing explosives, and you're usually living for quite a long time. This class is incredibly good at surviving. It can have a, if you're, unless you're being stupid, it has a hard time not dying, for that matter. This class is so good. And on top of that, like, unless you're really focusing hard on drop shots, you don't need a whole lot in the way of guns and resources. Namely, thinking of how I played Horde Roulette, shoutouts to just getting in the silverback. You got a fresh 1000 shots and you're bleeding Mulcher. Stuff like that is really super duper helpful. Needs a little bit more as far as costs go if you are going like the route of a lot of drop shots, as well as then if you wanted to get your cooldown reductions up, get your damage up, and getting your ammo stock up and your drop shots and stuff like that is also pretty darn important. Like, so it's got a lot of damage, the versatility is great, its tankiness is great. Veteran is S, straight up. I mean, a lot of the main reasons I have, and like I have my notes here, just like it's about the alt. Because like the damage is solid, it doesn't have bleeding, but it just puts out so much damage with Living Legend, and alongside of that, with it having, what is it, the Headshot Master, I think it is, or the card that does extra critical damage. This ends up being your secondary Marksman. It does a lot of damage just straight up sniping enemies, just getting those headshots. You can get a lot of one-shot kills, and that is gross. As far as like survivability, this class is tied for last as far as the tanks go. I would say between Brawler and Veteran, arguably this is the least tanky tank of the tanks. And to an extent, it's less tanky than, like, say, your Infiltrator or Blademaster with their straight up healing. You got Band of Brothers to help you out with stim. You've got Dug In that gives you some tankiness whenever you're on cover. I think it's up to 60% whenever you're in cover. It does have some stuff to keep you alive, but I think the biggest way that this class survives is the, I'm just going to do an absolutely absurd amount of damage, and I can auto aim it to critical hit you at any time, and also I can share it with my friends. The best defense is just having an absolute ton of offense. On top of that, the Veteran is fairly inexpensive. It's got ammo regen on it. A lot of times I find myself only needing maybe like a long shot or maybe a Lancer GL to buy, and then once I buy that once, so long as I don't die, I'm good to go. Or a lot of times, if I want a cheap build, I find myself being thoroughly good to go with just taking, say, like an Anchor's Retro Lancer. I've got my regular Lancer to go, and just swapping between those two does a lot of damage for me that ends up leaving me pretty satisfied. Just going with those two weapons, which doesn't cost like nearly anything, and they're always on the map too if you needed to find any extra ammo or you end up losing a retro or something like that. Like, they give you a lot of options because of how strong Living Legend is. It's all focused around Living Legend. I mean, this class doesn't have much in the way of crowd control. It doesn't have bleeding, doesn't have burning, it doesn't have like much of anything other than, you know, some good headshot damage, and it can auto aim that headshot damage, and honestly that's all it needs. This class is disgustingly strong. It's super strong to share with your friends. The Marksman and Veteran combo is arguably the strongest in the game. Either that or Tac and Demo. Between the two, flip a coin. Boss killer on Tac and Demo side, Veteran and Marksman kill everything else. This is what it feels like. This class is crazy good. Okay, on to the support classes, and starting with Combat Medic, they're balanced. This is with the changes that were made in Operation 6 Drop 2, where we ended up seeing the Lancer damage really get buffed up. They ended up increasing the radius, I believe it was, on intervention, alongside of a few other changes made it so it can hold its own pretty darn well. It's got a nice set of balance in that it does a decent amount of damage with your Lancers. You've got some crit damage if you wanted to roll into that with your perks. It ends up holding its own decently well. Now, given, I would say this is arguably the lowest damage class in the game, mainly just because it doesn't have any particular bleeds or any super strong sets. It's just consistent, steady Lancer damage wins the race type of stuff, which is still good. It just, if you're going up against, like, say, a Swarmac on your own, you're gonna be in some rough spots. Now, that being said, survivability wise, it does have some really strong tank cards in what I believe it's Razor's Edge and Perfect Condition. Oh, I almost forgot it. If you have one or two of them, both of them end up being pretty darn useful. The stim generation on this is one of the absolute best. I would say maybe Anchor's Harness Energy might be a little bit better, but the fact that you can steadily give yourself stim at any time, which stim in itself is healing and it heals in a decent radius of you, is fantastic. And honestly, that's one of my favorite reasons why I love the combat medic. Intervention being a lifesaver, especially if somebody's super down range, if like a juvie's about to kill them, wait until the juvie gets moderately close, land a good kill shot on them with like a long shot, and boom, your teammate ends up getting an instant revive. And what always makes this class, like, it'll never be considered super bad in my eyes just because of the team revive. Like, that, having that lifesaver at any given moment is one of the best. It can be one of the most clutch things out there in the game. On top of that, they end up being an engineer's best friend with the healing repair, which I'm still wanting to, like, I just got it to max on my combat medic, is 50% of a fortification's health is healed off of that. A lot of times, if we know we're safe, we'll, you know, play a little bit more clumsily intentionally so that we get downed and the team revive goes off just to get a mass repair out to all fortifications, which is lovely, especially if you're a mechanic or an architect in that regard. Where this class ends up having its hard times is if you don't have that team revive in. If you don't have that team revive handy and you're rebuilding it, thankfully the Lancer damage update did make it so you can recharge it faster, and given suppressive recharges there, but it's kind of irrelevant these days since the Lancer does it so steadily and consistently. If you don't have your team revive, then you're just not a lot of damage, a bit of a stim generator, and you're running a risk, especially on your boss waves, if you use your team revive prematurely. You use it on a set of downs that could have easily just been revived. I notice ends up being the kryptonite of combat medics, but still ends up, between the pros and the cons, this is where this class is a really nice example of a balanced class. Now on to Jack. I feel like somebody needs to come get me because I'm struggling with this class. I'm throwing it in B. I'm throwing it in B because, like, okay, so I'm going and using the alt. The alt is solid, and especially even though the coalition hates me with getting rampage cards, heaven forbid I get any of them because I'm like level 2 on my rampage, which is killing me. But the bleed damage on that is incredible. You can take an enemy off the map that is a burden right out of the gate. Like, I always look for Multra Scions, Boomshot Scions, even Buzz Kills are great to take out. You can get the elite drones, Flame Grenadiers. There's a lot of good enemies that you can take right off the map in a heartbeat, and they will die if you have explosive hijack on, which is lovely. And the damage you can output with that, or with rampage combined with hijack, is astounding. It is amazing how much damage you can do. Outside of that, I think the biggest problems for me with Jack end up being that, one, when you get downed, you cannot crawl. Sometimes it is just super hard to know when you're going to go down. You end up going and healing beaming somebody just for a quick revive, and an elite drone is targeting you right on the money, like 3 hits and you're down. I've been experimenting with trying to use the health perk a little bit more, so I'm a bit tankier, but that ends up being a big problem. When you go down, you can't even crawl yourself to safety. I'd argue if TC could even put in where, you know, they get a little Scooty Puff Jr. just to push them back into safety, and as well, they have less health when they're down. They have less health in general. And the class like also has a bunch that makes it's a jack of all trades and a master of none. Like, it doesn't, you can't really make it into an engineer. It's got good fast repair speed, but then you end up making it super expensive unless you throw a lot of money at repair cost. It does some good damage, but whenever it's just the zapper, it doesn't do a ton of damage. Not meant to, but it's just a zapper. I get it. It's not really tanky, so you can't be a frontliner unless you're using your hijack a bunch. Even with your cooldown reduction max, it's still hard to really get that hijack rolling. Getting the hijack ult to keep coming back consistently. Like, I have a hard time really finding the best way to make this class excel. It's got a lot of strong points, and also either buff the forge so it's relevant, or can we get some other cards that don't involve the forge? It could use a few more flexible things. Like, I've debated if it could have even like an in-betweener between hijack and the stun, where I'll show the clip of what happens on the smite video that I did, where maybe you can get enemies to, like, you shoot a dart at an enemy and it causes the enemy to go into a frenzy and start friendly firing teammates around it, so it's got a little bit of extra crowd control or something like that. I don't know. Some things that I've thought of that would help bring Jack up to balance, but I have the hardest time with making Jack relevant, especially with if you're running shock modifiers on Horde. That ends up being kryptonite. You can only take a couple shots and you're downed. A lot of times you go down and instantly die because of the shock damage too. I love the class. It's a hell of a lot of fun, but man, the lack of health and the lack of movement when you revive, I think, are the two hardest things for me to really justify it. It makes me just sit in the back and be worried to move and just try and get safe revives the best I can, and that's all I really do until I'm ready to go out and kill a boss, and that's about it. On to mechanic. So this was another one that I got a lot of feedback for, and I still think I might play it a heck of a bit different from a lot of people, at least the way I normally see mechanics, but I really love this class now. This class is a lot better than what I thought it was when I did the first tier list, namely with the shout out to the own damage that the mechanic can do. Also, I know I have the old outdated picture here. I need to go through and update it, but you have a lot of options to do damage as an engineer. Like, you can focus super hard on building a bunch of sentry guns and just being your straight up engineer, but I really love going your personal defense, your custom robotics, and then running like your shredder rounds, so you just have a ton of damage just coming from your engineer, so they can really hold their own. Personal defense, I think, is like one of my favorite cards, if not one of my favorite cards in the game, just because of the amount of damage. I run into an enemy that's ambushing me when I'm moving, like, you know, a barricade out, and I just unload all hellfire with my enforcer on it. I'm strong with the enforcer gang, by the way. I really do love the enforcer. And just the burst damage you do is so relevant for so much of the game, and I love it for that. I bounce a little bit back and forth on the usability of the turret though, because I have a lot of time. Say if I'm building my turret on top of barricades, and then, you know, if I'm focusing down a Swarmak, the Swarmak moves slightly in a way that I can't get it, or I need to rotate my turret around, I try and pick up the turret, and then it ends up picking up the barricade down below it. Now, I know that's not the fault of the mechanic, that is a fault of the game, which, God, I wish that would get fixed. Stuff like that. Like, you know, when you have overlapping fortifications, if there was a way we could choose which fortification we were picking, because when you pick up the wrong fortification, hell hath no frustration quite like that. But the damage this class puts out is great. The efficient fabrication and the amount of tankiness you can get on your fortifications is great. One of the things as far as the criteria I throw down for this tier list is how expensive is it. With all engineers, it's as much money as you got. You can build as many things as you want to. They're the ones that get the discount as their passive, and yeah. So on the flip side though, what's really nice is that discount card that you can get on this class is very effective, especially if you end up getting like a power surge or the power boost, I think was what they're called as far as the modifiers. There's one that like cuts down your fortification costs by like 50%, and then another one where you pick up 3 times the amount of power off the field. Both of those end up making it, if you combine that with how cheap your fortifications are, then it's ridiculously strong. You can build so many things. On top of that, Overload is a great card. You've got a lot to help out with your repair speed. They did fix an issue that I had with the Engineer in Gears 4. They threw in that, the healing repair card that gives you stim whenever you're repairing stuff. That is so much better than Flow. Flow is not that useful, but hey, if you combine Flow and healing repair, I imagine you're like invincible whenever you repair. But still, I'm very happy they ended up doing that, and this is the epitome of like your good engineer all around, does great damage, great at building stuff, has a good solid ultimate that you can also share with teammates. Just fantastically done, fantastic class overall. Alongside of that ends up being the Robotics Expert. Between the two now, these are yin and yang in my mind. Earlier on the previous tier list, Robotics Expert was my favorite by a mile. Now it's very even. That being said, what really makes the Robotics Expert S tier is the amount of damage you can do, alongside of you've got the bleeding options that you have with bloody precision shots or something like that. I can't think of what it is. Any precision weapons get bleeding damage if your ultimate's up, alongside of the bloody DR1. If you can get DR1, or as we all call him around here, Dad, if you can get Dad to focus on the right enemy, he can do an insane amount of damage. It is ridiculous if you get them to focus in on like a carrier and they got the distance that the carrier doesn't go and smack them or kill them or anything like that, and they can lay waste to bosses and stuff like that, which is lovely. On top of the DR1 is a live decoy, which is fantastic. The class itself has a lot to do with sniping, so getting precision weapons and DB weapons is wonderful. On top of that, I think the biggest thing that makes this class amazing is its precision repair card, which is whenever you kill an enemy with a precision weapon, it heals all of your fortifications except for taps, because for some reason taps don't count. They count them as objectives, whatever. But this class is insanely good with repairing stuff. Not just that card, but then you have super duper fast repairs on things that are healthy, with I can't remember what they're called. There's the Nerves of Steel card, and then there's the Combat Engineer card, I believe it is. But there's a bunch of repair cards on the Robotics Expert that are ridiculously strong. If you need to repair anything fast, this is the class to play as. This is where like the mechanic is the best class to build fortifications with. The Robotics Expert is the best class to not build maybe as many fortifications, but keep them maintained and keep them very healthy, and I love the class for that. Although that being said, Coalition, we got to do something about Parting Gift. That card sucks. Like I've never seen anybody use Parting Gift. I would love something to actually be useful to be thrown in there. Like there's a good video to be made about the amount of like absolutely useless cards on some of these classes, because like I could see what somebody was thinking, but it just doesn't play out in reality as it does on paper. There's a good discussion to be had. The one I always go to though is Parting Gift on this class. I never use it. If you do use it though, say something, say hi. I want to know you. I want to know how you play. I want to see videos. Please tell me. I want to know this. Okay, anyways, enough rambling. On to Tactician is going straight to, so like this is the hard one for me. I almost just dropped it. It's between these two, between S plus and S, and God, I have the hardest time. Like I don't know if there can be like an S divide or something like that, like somewhere in between. This class is so good, but I'm gonna throw in an S, mainly just because I'm comparing it to what the damage output of these classes are in particular. Now, given what I like about this class is it is moderately on the inexpensive side of things. You absolutely need the perks of the explosive ammo regen. You absolutely need like either one of two ways to play. If you go the route of going assault rifle damage, that assault rifle damage is great to get your cooldown reductions going fast. A lot of people will go cooldown on kill though, for the sake of getting anything that you kill some juvies and stuff like that, you get your cooldowns back for your resupply super duper fast. The ultimate in itself is one of, if not the most useful ultimate abilities in this game, just for the sake of the ammo regeneration. It has no bad spot. There is no bad time to use that ultimate. It is always great. You have a lot to build around it. You can do the instant reload on the Tactician, so you're unloading drop shots or grenade launchers or boom shots or what have you without needing to reload them is unreal. The card that I just learned about, and this is shoutouts to Ninja Demon Hunter and Crescent Sonar. If you watch this, thank you to in particular for showing me the magic of Disciplined. And that was where, if it wasn't for that, I would say, why does this class have anything to do with assault rifles? But boy, you throw down assault rifle damage, you get a Lancer GL, and the bleeding damage combined that you get from Razor Hail, or Shredder, excuse me, it's called Shredder. The bleeding damage you get on Shredder combined with the assault rifle you damage with discipline, building up your damage over time, is insane. And then your cooldown reductions come back super duper fast, and that's what got us through boss rush on our first Masters run. If you haven't watched that video, you should go watch it. All in all, just an amazing class. The main reason I don't put it in S+, and like I said, it is damn close. It is so close. Is the biggest thing is just I'm comparing alts here. Between the two, this one can absolutely obliterate the whole final wave, and that's the biggest difference between them. This one can come close, but it's second place to it, basically, in my opinion. I know there should be some disagreement there, because there is a lot of ways to make the Tactician run super efficiently and super well and do a butt ton of damage while you're at it. But like the fact that you can just mark a carrier, you can mark a Swarmak, you can mark a Kestrel, boom, and then with that you do the combination of throwing down your damage. That bleed damage brings your artillery strike back, and you just keep doing that much amount of damage with it, is insane. The resupply cycle, which is about the same thing, is also amazing, and it's got the utility of your teammates around you. In my mind, just the sheer amount of damage that this does ends up outweighing by not much, but enough. That being said, this class is still absolutely amazing, and it's disgusting. It's so stupid strong, and it is the most divided between a rank that I have a class at right now. Like between S+ or S, I can see it going either way. It's got a lot of different ways to play, a lot of different tactics you can run. You've got the interrogation route that you can go. If your demo runs spotter support, the demo tac combo is disgustingly strong while we're at it. Just so good. It's such a great class. God, I can't say that enough times. And on to the exciting part, well, at least exciting since Operation 7, is the promotional classes. These classes used to all kind of suck for the most part. They were all pretty coming into Operation 7, and coming out of Operation 7, I think they all have a pretty decently strong place, to the point where you can use them all pretty viably. Like I said, these are the last classes that I've needed to level. Slugger was one of the last, Protector is one of the last, and Striker is my last class to get to level 20, so I'm playing them the most now. This is where I'm most familiar with, and I can say safely that I like all of them for a lot of their own unique traits. Let's start with my favorite of them is going to be the Architect. And given all that praise and just whack, I'm just throwing it an A+. But really, okay, so the main difference of why I put this here is because for an engineer, it is not your strongest engineer class. Like like I said, the mechanic is amazing for building. The Robotics Expert is great for repairing and stuff like that. This class is, I would say, one of the betters for doing damage, and just the fact that the hologram is as useful as it is makes it a free live decoy that comes back fast and can be a lifesaver. On top of the amount of damage this class does is really underestimated, I think. The amount of damage that Deception does when you're shooting an enemy in the back, and you've got that card maxed, it's a green card so it's easy to max, is 200%. I was doing a ton of damage when I knew this class was one of my favorites whenever Ritual came out with Operation 8. The first modifiers they had, it involved I think it was 3 times the amount of health. On waves 10, 11, and 12, I was throwing out my decoy, distracting Scions, and I was doing a lot of damage to Scions. Whenever I felt like my damage was relevant in those waves, that's what made the difference for me. That backstab damage is unreal. The distraction that hologram has is amazing, and you can make it last for the whole wave. I see that the Coalition fixed that issue with, what was it, the Veteran, where you could make your ultimates last through multiple waves. Yeah, they cut your ults off at the end of each wave now, which I'm like, oh, come on, because I could have decoys running for like 3-4 waves at a pop with I'll run a grenade launcher and I'll run an enforcer, and just the burst damage, the burst hits of both of those guns just going crazy will let this ult last forever, and it distracts Wakatu, snatchers, carriers, the good stuff. The stuff that you don't want harming your team the most, it can distract it very well. As far as being an engineer, it has a little bit there. I mean, you've got some repair speed, you've got your top of the line if you want to go more sentry based, you've got flow, which somebody uses. On top of that, I love Regenerative Field. I adore this card just for the sake of, it's what, every 4.25 seconds it gives you some stim, and that is a major lifesaver. That allows you to go out a lot of times and do some repairs or put out a fortification, and it saves you a lot of times. It's been a lifesaver where if a Swarmak, for example, hits a lot of rockets on us in particular, my stim catches all of it, teammates go down in front of me, pick them up. If I need cogtags, throw them in the fabricator. I end up being the one that lives. And for that, I love this class. They really did a great job of bringing this one back. I don't have that much negative to say other than it doesn't do as great as the other two on an engineer's front, and the damage isn't as immensely strong as, like, you know, your shredder rounds of personal defense, or if dad ends up doing a ton of damage with the DR1 and just sniping enemies from afar. But damn, does it come very, very close. Seriously, this is my, I think of any class, this is now my like underdog favorite nowadays. I love playing as Architect, it's so fun. On to Protector, also an A+. Now the way I have it in my notes is the best way, which this is going to be in that document that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. But imagine Blademaster damage without Electro Blade, but with good shotgun damage that can be easily subbed in, and you get a bubble. that's straight up what this class is like. The Nasher damage ends up being an easily swap in and out card, where I feel like I have a harder time choosing to use the Nasher damage on the Blademaster unless I'm going the hard ambush route. But as far as the damage that this does, with the passive being fixed to actually being something that's actually worth something, like what the pill, the last passive was every 5th headshot drops a pilfer of ammo, which was just with no sniping ability, no sniping cards. It just started with, like, Emil just started with a mark. So yeah, that was a great change. They basically made it so whenever you get bleeding damage, you get healing. It's very similar to like Thrill of the Hunt, very similar to the Blademaster's passive as well. Where this has a bit of an advantage on the Blademaster is that it does have the bleeding built into the kit rather than built into the like directly built into a certain circumstance. What I mean by that is, for the Blademaster, wave 1, you don't have bleeding. You have to wait until wave 2, start leveling that up, and then you'll get bleed, and then you're good to go. This has got it wave 1 with the bloody blade, and then you do the extra melee damage with big knife, so you're doing tons of bloody damage right from the beginning. Or if you're doing escape, which, given I know we're not judging escape right now, but you need the Venom Blade card, which gives you an insane amount of bleeding damage, but you gotta wait for the Venom. Versus the Protector, gets the good bleeding damage, good melee damage right out of the gate. And on top of that, the shield can be an absolute lifesaver in the right scenarios. In a, like, not, like, I go back and forth. Like, I think, at the end of the day, I do prefer the Electro Blade and the amount of stun that this does. But I gotta give love to whenever I see Swarmak missiles coming in, when a Guardian or Sentinel's about to fire, a Boomshot Scion is about to drop shots, and my stim is gone, and I just pop the bubble up. The bubble lasts for a while. You can run the bubble supply, like the bubble duration, and just that protection ends up being amazing. Now, given a con immediately of said bubble is the bubble giveth and taketh away. You can protect yourself from the inside the bubble, but you can't shoot and kill everything from inside the bubble, which would probably make it like really dang OP. Oh, borderline OP. That'd be kind of ridiculous in the right situations. The way to best use it is just to kind of isolate. I always call it isolating the field. You just drop the bubble down around one enemy, knife, and kill them, and try and lure another enemy in, like kind of a few at one, or maybe one or two at a time, so that you're not getting overwhelmed by external fire and stuff like that. If you could shoot out of this, that would make it absolutely insane at this point. But it's a great alternative to the Blademaster, a little bit tankier. It's got regenerative field, so it's got a stim generation on it right out of the gate that doesn't require you to be near a tap. All in all, they made this a great class. I still prefer Blademaster to the Protector, but a fantastic melee class nonetheless. They've really brought it back from what I thought was one of the weakest classes. Like, just TC, well done. And they didn't even change much. They really didn't. A couple modifications here and there, but like that was really it. On to Slugger. So Slugger, as much as it pains me, I'm throwing it an A. It's nicely balanced, and this is like, so my main, like, going through and judging this class, a lot of what it is, it reminds me of how the Soldier was in Gears of War 4, and it was Like it feels either way too with the, if you went the assault rifle damage build on Gears 4 or on Soldier, or if you went the grenade build on Soldier, both of them were absolute gods and menaces on the first initial waves. So like it was what, the first 5 or 10 on Horde Frenzies that we would do in Gears 4, and Gears 5, if we're doing our Horde Frenzies, it's like the first, I would say the first 8 waves, you're doing a decent amount of damage with those grenades. Now, given you don't have the assault rifle damage here, but still, like you end up being, you can be a rampaging machine with those grenades, just constantly buy them from the fabricator, throw them out, perk up your damage perk, and you are just destroying everything on the map. Now, given whenever you get into the later waves, that damage ends up not being as relevant as you go along. It ends up waning out a little bit. What I do really love about the Slugger now, though, versus like what the Soldier was and stuff, I'd argue that I like the Slugger more than I do the Soldier from Gears 4, is the amount of accessibility you have in getting grenades. It's not just the resupply. In a lot of cases, you might arguably not even need the resupply. It's just a nice perk to have. And it comes in handy mid-wave, but like just buying all your grenades from the fabricator and then switching what grenades you're getting from the fabricator is also great. So I'll use like frag grenades on a lot of the enemies early on. If there's a ton of juvies, like jingle juvies is the last video that just went up, shock grenades end up being amazing there. And just if you need an AoE space, shock grenades are amazing. But then flame grenades and incendiary grenades are where I love it for the later waves. That's where I end up going, is waves 9 through 12. I will keep my eye out for wardens. I will keep my eye out for the major bosses like matriarchs and carriers and snatchers and stuff like that, that like a lot of times they'll end up staying still or not moving too much outside of an AoE. Throw a whole bunch of incendiary grenades at them, and that damage over time is immense. It is really good. Combine that with your ultimate that can stun most of the enemies except for snatchers for some odd reason. I don't know why that is. I feel like it's a glitch. But you combine the stun with that burning damage and you stay decently relevant. Not as relevant as a lot of the other classes. Again, you're not going to be out damaging your demos. You're not going to be out damaging your Blademasters or your Infiltrators and stuff like that. But the fact that you can still really hold your own, the crowd control of the ultimate is great, although it kind of comes at a cost where the damage doesn't seem to do as well. Like you seem to lose damage on your ultimate, which is strange to me, unless it's triple melee damage because they counted as melee damage. It's weird. It's weird. I don't know. But like all in all, it's got a lot of versatility to it. Doesn't need a whole lot in the way of weaponry and stuff like that, but does really, it relies on the perks and stuff like that more than most classes. I would say arguably up there with the gunner, as far as, yeah, you really want to get your damage card up or your damage perk up. You really want to get damage resistance going. You really want the grenade resupply because it does end up coming in handy mid-wave rather than running back to the fabricator. But still, great crowd control, solid damage, a monster early on, and just it's the grenade soldier returned in a new incarnate, and I'm here for it. I really do enjoy it. And last but not least, on to the Striker, my last class that I've got to level myself. It's MP. Now, given what I have in my notes is basically, imagine the Protector or the Blademaster, except you don't have Electro Blade and you don't have the bubble and you don't have bleeding damage unless you have a Breaker Mace. But then you basically have the Ambush card from Marksman, which has been an interesting discovery that I've been toying around with a lot since from level 17 onward. I've been rocking this build where I run a sniper rifle and I get a breaker mace right at the beginning, or as early as you can if you're doing normal horde. I understand you only start with 1,000 power. And you just run with that. You snipe as many enemies as you can. When you need to get up close and breaker mace the crap out of stuff, then you breaker mace the crap out of stuff. But it ends up being a nice far range, close range combination that it makes this class decently solid. Now, given that being said, its ultimate I feel is a bit risky. Shoutouts to Midget here. He's been helping me at least with some guidance of telling me, yeah, mainly use the ult against bosses and like your tankier enemies and stuff like that to just keep them stunned out to oblivion. It's basically the same ult as the Sluggers, but just doing it in a melee form, which given you do a lot more damage with it with the melee form. But yeah, it's the danger of being up close and personal and stunning still is a bit daunting and a little bit scary, but I've had enough success with it, like against carriers and snatchers and stuff like that. This alongside of something that I need to be mentioning throughout, all of the promotional classes only have like one way to play, with maybe substituting in a few cards. Architect is probably the closest exception to that, but like you really only play these one way. Striker especially, you basically play it one way. Do you want to throw on what, melee resistance, or do you want to throw on like if you wanted to get your breaker mace damage off or something? There's not a whole lot to throw in there. GSD is a cool idea for a card that allows exploding damage to go off whenever you're meleeing stuff, but I notice I very rarely get it off, to the point where you're more likely to get a likely like AoE explosion kill that kills multiple enemies or sets multiple enemies on fire with the Brawler than you are with the GSD. Or explosive headshot on the Marksman is going to work better than this would. It seems like the radius is not quite there. Maybe if they buff the radius and how far it hits, then it would be, I would have a stronger case for it and maybe throw it up into A. But I think because the main reason I'm throwing it here is this class does need a lot in the way of weaponry, as far as needing breaker maces and needing long shots. It's a bit riskier and less tankier overall. You got stim that you can get from melees and stuff like that, which is great, but it doesn't compare to the Blademaster. It doesn't compare to the stim you get from the passive on the Brawler. It doesn't compare to the bubble and the stim generation you get on the Protector. So it's, as far as melee classes go, there's still all the better options, but it still does hold its own. And I kind of love it for the fact that it's a tertiary sniper in a way. Like if you're picking sniper, I would say go this route of the Marksman first, and then you got the veteran to look at, and then I would then go for the striker, I guess. This class is fun though. It holds its own now, and I'm happy. Like, even though it's B and it's, you know, it's tied for the lowest as far as the tier list goes, it's still relevant now. Maybe it's because we saw where it was and now it is relevant, and I do feel happy about that. But like, I've been having a lot of fun with this class lately. It's just the expenses can be a bit of a pain, or I just played the daily Horde or before I started this, and I ended up getting I accidentally got killed, lost my breaker mace and my sniper, and that's 6,000 power down the drain, which just hurts. If you die, this is one of the classes that gets hurt the most by a death. But still solid, but does need a little bit more to push it up to the next level. I would say if they added in a bit more to make it so it was more unique in what it does, which the first strike card is the closest we've got to that, but it still doesn't really hold its own unique traits all that much different from the Blademaster or the Protector in that regard, which, given I don't expect TC to be going back in and changing a lot of these classes now. I think they're fairly set in stone as we go into operationless content, as we start to get to the end of Operation 8. But that would that would make a fun discussion to talk about some different changes they can make to the striker. But overall, I'm happy at least where it is. If somebody goes striker, I'm not going to be worried or concerned. This class is relevant. It does well. It just needs a little bit of love, and that's about it. And that is the whole list. To close this out, like I said in the beginning, if you disagree with any of my opinions, talk it out. Tell me some builds to try out. Help me with Jack. Like, Jack is my class I struggle with the most, and I hate that that's the case. Like, if I had to pick between these two, I would easily move Striker onto the next round over Jack. I am just struggling with this class. Give me some advice, give me some help. Any builds that you recommend, if you want to make your own tier list, like I said, it'll be in the description below. Don't be toxic, and I'm not going to deal with it. As well, if you wanted to make a video, tag me in it. Let me know that you made a tier list video. I love to watch these, and like I said, I wouldn't have made this into its own thing if I didn't love watching tier list content myself. So if you got some different opinions, talk it out in any way that you want to me, and I will be sure to get back to you. Other than being a toxic, then don't do that. And if you wanted to see what my criteria was for a lot of these tier lists, I mean, I'll show it. I use OneNote a lot because, you know, I worked for Microsoft, so I got to use their Microsoft stuff. I based all of my stuff based off of damage, survivability, crowd control, or if they do conditions, how useful the ultimate was, the multiple way, if there's multiple card layouts and different ways to play it. Is the class expensive? Does it have direct counters that kill it? But are there enemies that you directly counter yourself? Think the gunner with the Kestrel. is the main way to look at it. Take a look at this document and let me know what you think about all of it. Let me know what you think about these tier lists. I've been debating if I'm going to be doing a few more of different things going forward for gears, and as well we'll see what we end up getting done before. I know things are going to get a little bit quieter as we go into the end of the operations. I imagine there's a bunch of new games coming out here in the fall, and we'll see where a lot of the Gears community ends up in the meantime. I've got a lot working on what I'm doing for the map video series, that all I'm saying. That is kind of tier listy in a way. But either way, let me know what you think of this. I'm rambling on at this point. I will sign off for now. Thank you everybody for watching. This is probably my definitive tier list going forward, unless I see enough different opinions that I need to make a new video, or some things change that I got to change this up for. But we will see how that goes. I'll catch you in the next video, and until that time, stay thirsty, my friend.